I would consider myself a 90s kid. Even though I was born in 97, I still got to experience most of the wonders that the 90s had to offer. And one of those things was Cartoon Network, a very popular television network that aired some of the best shows for kids. And one of the most loved shows on the network was called Samurai Jack. From having such a catchy theme song to an overall intriguing story, this show was amazing. Today, I wanted to talk about one particular scene that really stood out to me and left me speechless. Let's watch the scene and see how it goes.
It's time to end it, don't you think?
Never. They are just machines. I'll find a way. I always have.
When you have the sword, but now it's gone. There's no hope.
I've been doing fine without it.
So to give some context on this scene is that Jack is currently hiding from the main antagonist of the show, Aku, a shape-shifting demon with supernatural abilities. And what really stresses him out is that his magical sword is missing, the only weapon that can harm a demon like Aku.
Well, listen to you. And what are you going to do when Aku finds you and realizes you have no sword?
Aku doesn't know, and he hasn't shown himself in years. He keeps thinking that one of his machines can defeat me.
Maybe he's right.
As the scene goes on, we really see the conflict between Jack and his past self. The doubt, the worriness, the fact that he thinks that he won't be able to escape Aku and that his evil will actually overthrow the land.
You haven't faced anything so powerful. How much longer can you keep this up?
It always seems bad at first, but then I find a way. They are just nuts and bolts. Just nuts and bolts.
This is where the scene becomes really compelling. Past Jack says to himself that this is the most powerful opponent that he's ever faced. Out of all the demons and monsters that Aku has conjured up, this one seems to be unbeatable. But Jack says, no, I've been through far worse and faced much mightier opponents, and this is just another one that'll be slain by my samurai spirit. And another thing he says is that they're just nuts and bolts. They're just nuts and bolts, which is a great way of thinking because it just breaks everything down to a much simpler form.
Who cares anymore? There's no way home. There's nothing to fight for. There's no more honor. Come to think of it, the only honorable thing to do is quiet. No! I won't spend eternity in this forsaken time! What do you want from me? I want it to end. Aren't you tired? Wouldn't it be great to be free of all of this? Our ancestors are waiting for us. They want you to join them. There. You'll never make it! They'll get you! I'll make it.
So the last segment of this scene was what really surprised me. His past self is telling him, what's the point? There's no hope and nothing left to fight for, so why even bother continuing? And if you didn't understand the hidden message, he also mentioned that Jack should perform seppuku, which is a Japanese term for cutting your own stomach and unaliving yourself. And when I first heard that, I was so shook. And I know what you're thinking. Why is a show airing on Cartoon Network showing such a mature theme? Well, the funny thing is that season 5 of Samurai Jack actually aired on Adult Swim rather than Cartoon Network, which is perfect because as kids, we grew up watching the show for the action and the entertainment. And then, after season 4, it was a total of 14 years before season 5 aired, and all of us are now adults, meaning we would appreciate more mature themes and more dark subjects. However, to truly understand why his past self is saying these things and why his future self is acting the way he's acting, we must go all the way back to season 1 and analyze Jack's character from when he first started his journey to this point in time. Let's go. For years, Samurai Jack was untouchable. He wasn't just a hero, he was discipline, patience, honor. No matter how impossible the challenge became, Jack always moved forward. But in season 5, episode 2, Jack does something unexpected. It breaks him, and what makes this scene so powerful isn't the action. There are no explosions, no grand battle, no villain standing in front of him, because the enemy Jack faces here is himself. The conversation between Jack and his younger self isn't just nostalgia, it's psychological breakdown. A moment where the show quietly asks one terrifying question: what happens when a hero stops believing in himself? Before we can understand this scene, we need to understand why it hurts. Because this isn't the Samurai Jack we remember. Classic Jack was almost mythological. He moved with clarity, certainty. Even when surrounded by chaos, he stayed calm. The future was cruel, but Jack represented stability, hope, purpose. But season 5 introduces us to someone completely different, older, exhausted, traumatized, and most importantly, lost. 50 years have passed. He still hasn't defeated Aku. He hasn't aged. He hasn't gone home. And somewhere along the way, he lost his sword, the very thing that defined his mission. But the genius of this scene is that the show understands something important. Jack didn't just lose a weapon, he lost who he believed he was. Young Jack simply isn't Jack's past, he represents Jack's ideal self, the version of himself that still believed victory was possible, the version untouched by trauma. Notice how differently they feel visually. Young Jack is composed, clean, confident. Meanwhile, older Jack looks fragmented, messy beard, heavy eyes, slumped posture. Even before the dialogue starts, the visuals are already telling us something. These are no longer the same person, and that's what makes the conversation painful. Because Jack isn't arguing with someone else, he's arguing with the version of himself he feels he's failed. He speaks like someone carrying unbearable exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, psychological exhaustion. The kind that comes from trying for so long that failure seems inevitable. And this is where the show becomes surprisingly mature, because Samurai Jack understands something many stories don't. People rarely give up all at once. Giving up happens slowly, quietly. You stop believing effort matters. You convince yourself things cannot change. And eventually, hopelessness starts sounding reasonable. That's what this conversation really is. Jack trying to justify surrender, while another part of him desperately fights against it. Younger Jack becomes the voice asking, "When did you stop being me?" And older Jack has no answer, because deep down, he's already asking himself the same question. What makes this scene brilliant isn't just the writing, it's how the cinematography reinforces Jack's psychology. Look at the space around him, the emptiness, the silence. Samurai Jack has always trusted silence, but here, silence feels different, heavy, uncomfortable, almost oppressive. Jack often appears isolated in frame, small against giant empty environments. This isn't accidental. Visual storytelling works best when emotions become physical space. And in this scene, loneliness becomes architecture. The framing constantly reminds us that Jack is trapped, not by a coup, not by enemies, but his own mind. Even the pacing matters. The scene refuses to rush. There are pauses, moments of stillness, time for discomfort, because the show wants us to sit inside Jack's exhaustion, not just understand it intellectually, but feel it. At first glance, this scene looks like a hero questioning whether to continue, but that interpretation misses something deeper. This scene isn't actually about quitting, it's about identity. Jack's greatest fear isn't failure, it's transformation. He's terrified that after 50 years of violence, loss, and disappointment, he is no longer Samurai Jack. That the hopeful warrior from the past is gone forever. And honestly, that fear feels painfully human, because most people eventually experience some version of this. You look back at who you used to be, more motivated, more hopeful, more confident, and wonder, what happened? The brilliance of Samurai Jack is that it turns that feeling into a literal conversation, a man haunted by the person he used to be. The reason this scene works isn't because it's dramatic. It works because it feels honest. For a show about time travel, magic swords, and shape-shifting demons, this moment feels painfully real. Because sometimes the hardest battle isn't against monsters. Sometimes it's against the voice in your head telling you there's no point anymore. And what makes Jack compelling isn't that he never breaks, it's that he keeps moving even after he does. Season 5, Episode 2 quietly reminds us that heroes aren't people who never lose hope. They're people who keep walking, even when hope becomes difficult to recognize. And maybe that's why this scene stays with people. Because underneath all the fantasy, it understands something deeply human. Sometimes, the person hardest to face is yourself. So that's my take on the scene. Hopefully some of you guys could relate to it. I know it's pretty awesome how Samurai Jack started off as a kid's show on Cartoon Network and eventually started airing on Adult Swim, and they had the freedom to interpret more mature themes, which I loved because it makes us feel like we actually grew up with the show and that we got to see the young version of Jack and then the old version of Jack in ourselves. Let me know in the comments if you have any different interpretations of this scene, whether you like this video or you're just a big fan of the show. I know some people say that season 5 is a bit controversial, but hey, in my opinion it's amazing. Thanks for watching, and I hope you guys have a good day. Bye.